My payday routine is pretty simple, but so many people don't have something like this in place. I asked a couple of friends recently what they do when they get paid, but their responses didn't really tell me that they had this thing nailed down. So whilst it's simple for me, it's only this way because I've been doing it for 20 plus years, with lots of improvements being made along the way. So I wanted to share this with you as I know a lot of people don't have something like this in place, and often don't know where to start. And I also know this is an extremely powerful way of managing your money and your finances. I'm going to start with £3,000 a month as a net income figure, net of taxes and all that. Now, if you're bringing in a little less than that or a little more than that, then of course you'll need to adjust your numbers accordingly. Now, if I'm bringing in £3,000 net every month, then I want my contingency fund, which I've talked about in other videos, so I'm not going to go into that here, but I want my contingency fund to get to £18,000, which is 6 months worth of my net income. And I want to put my contingency fund into a high interest savings account. At the moment, I can comfortably get a savings account that pays upwards of 4% interest. I don't need an account that's at the top of a savings rate table, but I need something near the top that's dependable. So in this contingency fund, 10% of my net income will go into that account every month. So £300. I know that at this rate, it will take me 60 months or 5 years to build up to my £18,000, my 6 months worth of money. And I also know that every year, £3,600 will have built up in there. And I'm okay with the 5 years because this is a contingency fund. It's an amount to save effectively forever. But it's a contingency. It's in the name. It's for things I don't expect to happen. And for me, it's big things. Big things that, of course, are a possibility, but not very likely to happen, right? So that's 10% of my net income. And actually, before I move on, I want to talk about this contingency fund a little bit more too, because there's a change that will happen. Once I get halfway towards my contingency fund target, I'd likely slow down. I'd half the amount I'm putting in there, so I'd cut it from 10% to 5%. Now I know, of course, this will take longer for me to get to my 6 months target, but I'm okay with that because I've got a little bit of a cushion in there, and I'd rather be more aggressive with my investments whilst maintaining momentum on building up that contingency fund so it gets to that 6 months. But let's assume I'm not halfway yet, so I'm still at 10%. Okay, next, I want to put 20% of my income into investments, and that too in a tax efficient way. I'd use a stock and shares ISA, and I'd put £600 into there every single month. ISA allowances are currently at £20,000 a year, and in an ideal world, I'd like to max that out. But I also want to enjoy this journey of life. So 20% is what I'm comfortable with putting into investments, and that's where I'd keep it for the time being. So £600 would go into a stock and shares ISA, probably with Vanguard, and with that £600, I use it to buy index funds across a broad range of categories. S&P 500, emerging markets, global small cap for some SME exposure, less than 20% in some sort of US Treasury bonds, and some in gold and Bitcoin, though those wouldn't be through an ISA. So after my contingency fund savings and my investments, that leaves me with £2,100 every month. Next, holidays are important to me as well, and I'd want to spend roughly £4,000 a year on holidays. So that's £333 a month. That amount will be siphoned off every month into a different account, into a different savings account with a decent interest rate. And this would become my holiday account. If there's money in there, I go on holiday. If there isn't money in there, I don't go on holiday. I also like to set money aside for another big expense that comes around year on year, and that's to do with cars in the family. Vehicle excise duty, insurance, maintenance of the cars, and the odd fines that crop up here and there. This all adds up to quite a chunk of change. So I've learned over the years that there's peace of mind in pre-allocating this regular area of spend. I spend roughly £2,500 every year on cars in the family, and this works out to £208 a month. And again, this is siphoned off to another pot, which I call my driving pot, and that £208 goes into that account every single month. All of that now leaves £1,559. One last thing that happens on the day I get paid is that another 5% is siphoned off to charities of my own choosing, and that's 5% of net pay, so £150. Most of this is pre-allocated to charities that are dear to me. The rest builds up later to be allocated at a future date. This now leaves £1,409. So my cars are taken care of, my holiday plans are taken care of, my savings and investments are taken care of. Now that £1,409 goes on everything else. The monthly payments on a home, utilities, groceries, travel, everything is cut according to that £1,409 that is remaining. And if I want to spend more, I've got to make more. It's all pretty simple really, at least in my mind. And this is of course on a fictitious £3,000 net coming into my account every month. I bring in much more than that now, but when I started this payday routine, I had less than £2,000 coming in every month, and I used pretty much exactly the same percentages. I think my charitable causes pot at that time was around 2%, and I've gradually built it up to 2%. I will eventually get to 10% and then perhaps stop worrying about percentages for this bit at all, because I simply love doing it, contributing to something more than me, myself and I. But more on that on another day. The other thing that's interesting here is that some of the numbers I mentioned are fixed and the others are percentages. Savings, investments and charitable causes are percentages, holidays and driving costs are fixed. Now whilst those last two may increase over time if I get a better car or I want to go on a more expensive holiday, they will in some way always remain fixed, as in a set amount every single month. Whereas the two things that are most important to my financial health, my savings and my investments, will always increase as my income does, as they are percentages. It's built into my system, my financial payday system. This system keeps my finances simple for when I get paid, and I don't go around month to month figuring out what I need to do with my money the moment that pay lands in my account. My savings grow, my investments grow, and I can prioritize spending money on the things that give me joy at the same time. It works for me. Could it work for you? Let me know in the comments below, and watch this video next.